NRATV with Colion Noir.
Hello and welcome to another episode of CN Live. I'm Colion Noir. And our first guest is a former congressman, current executive director of the National Center for Policy Analysis, and board member for the NRA, Lieutenant Colonel Alan B. West. How's it going?
Good, Colion. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure having you. So we actually got to meet for the very first time at the NRA annual meetings, which is interesting because we live in the same city and didn't realize it either.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. You know, I'm up here in North Dallas and you're downtown, and we've been in my hometown of Atlanta a couple of weekends ago.
See, well, there you have it. So I kind of want to start off, generally speaking, just kind of talking about your military career in general, and what initially made you want to actually enter the services.
Well, it's very simple. My dad served in World War II, and my mother in European theater. My mother worked 25 years with as a civilian with the Marine Corps headquarters there in Atlanta. My older brother was a Vietnam-era Marine infantryman, and I remember on the steps of 651 Kennesaw Avenue there in Atlanta, I think I was 14, so in 1975, they asked me to endeavor to be the first officer in the family. So I started in high school ROTC and went on to college ROTC at the University of Tennessee. I was commissioned as an officer on 31 July 1982 and served for 22 years. Saw combat in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraq, and also was a civilian military advisor to the Afghan Army for 2.5 years.
Wow, that's awesome, actually. And at what point during this career did you decide that you wanted to get involved in politics?
Well, it was afterwards, my military service, and I remember meeting with a woman in Delray Beach, Florida. She was a local political consultant, and she said, just because you've taken off your uniform doesn't mean that the oath that you took to support and defend the Constitution has ended, and there's no statute of limitations there. That was a gut check. And so now I've become a big advocate for us having more military conservatives that are serving in out of uniform up there in Congress or in local governance.
Gotcha. Now, in being involved in politics and in looking back into your military career, how much of a crossover is there in terms of some of the skill set and things that you learned being in the military that kind of aids you and helps you now on the political scene?
Well, I think it's a drive and determination. It's a commitment to fundamental principles and values. I mean, when you understand the Constitution, that's what we take an oath to. We don't take an oath to a political party or to an individual. We take an oath to that which embodies who we are. And so I think that is something that when you go into political service, and I wish that we had more people who had been in uniform that were willing to make, as Abraham Lincoln called it, the last full measure of devotion to this country, because I think you would have a different sense of individuals instead of the self-serving or the special interest agenda that many people have. It's really about serving this country. And that's what our founding fathers, I think, always wanted us to have, were servant leaders.
Yeah. Admittedly, you know, me coming up, at least through the very beginning stages, genesis of my undergrad career, I tend to largely undervalue the importance of the military and the service and just the general perspective that you gain from it. And noticeably so, the kind of hardwired, like individuals who've served actually seem to come across a little bit more hardwired into the foundation of what this country was about in a lot of ways that a lot of my peers who didn't couldn't really fathom. And it's at this point now going forward, ironically enough, I always say the firearm served as a catalyst for a lot of things that changed in my life and in the best way possible. And so it's interesting to kind of see the deviation between, not saying there's anything wrong with not serving, but you know, there definitely is a different perspective or an added perspective that you tend to gain from serving in the military, at least from my experiences talking to people who have.
Well, I think that the discipline is definitely an aspect of that. And again, it comes back to a commitment to this country. You know, when I think about my father who left to serve in World War II, you know, he went and served and fought for a country that didn't afford him all the rights and privileges that others had. But, you know, I always remember him saying that the greatest honor that he had as a young man was to wear the uniform of the United States of America. And that was something that he really inculcated into us. And Now we are on our fourth generation. My nephew, who is serving active duty, and even my youngest daughter, she may end up being the fifth generation. She's in Army ROTC right now.
Awesome, awesome. That, I mean, again, setting a precedent for generations to come. I think that's just incredible. Now, did you hold any office prior to Congress?
No, absolutely not. And I think that was one of the things that was a shock, that a guy could come off, the battlefields and run for Congress. But again, I think that that's what this country should be about. We were never meant to have career politicians.
Yeah.
And I think that I kind of upset the apple cart down in South Florida because I'd never served in the state house, never served in the state senate. And it was kind of like, well, who is this chucklehead who shows up and runs for Congress and now he's a congressman? And they have ways of getting rid of you, redistricting and gerrymandering.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I'm happy to be out here in Dallas, Texas.
Awesome, awesome. Dallas is definitely growing on me. I'm a Houston boy through and through. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Dallas is growing on me. I like Dallas. Now, I grew up all my life thinking that Dallas was a whole nother world. But being here now, definitely, I see.
Texans or Cowboys? That's the big question. Texans or Cowboys?
I'm going to plead the fifth on that one. I still have to live here, so I'm not going to set myself up for failure. And then I go back to Houston pretty often, so I'm not going to set myself up for failure there either.
Oh my God! Here we go. All right.
So yeah, so I'm definitely going to walk that. I'm going to toe that line. How did you first initially get involved with the NRA?
Well, again, when you're in the military, I mean, you're around firearms all the time and everything, and you have taken an oath to support that Second Amendment. And people in the military are big supporters of the NRA and the Second Amendment. And so for me, really, it was supporting the organization because, now I need people that can be my voice to make sure that those rights are not taken away. And I was just absolutely shocked when someone approached me about potentially being a board member. And I became a board member last year in the election that was finalized in Louisville. And it was done by petition. And it was very humbling because you had members of the NRA, life members, that wanted to see me serve on that board. And I see it as a very distinct honor to be a guardian of that right. And when you look at the NRA, and it was established 1871, as I said when I spoke in Atlanta, this is the original civil rights organization. Yeah. And we need to brand it, and we need to talk about it in that way.
Yep, absolutely. Now, right now, especially coming on the back end of the annual meetings, I read a number of articles, a number of publications from the other side of the gun debate, essentially just hyper-focused on the idea that the NRA isn't a welcoming organization for people of color, minorities.
That's pretty funny. You're sitting here as a host on NRATV, and I'm sitting here as a board member of the NRA. So, why did those people talk to you and I?
I think they call us tokens.
Yeah, sellouts, Uncle Tom's, all that kind of nice stuff. But,
I just wonder how many tokens does it take to no longer be a token now?
I don't know. You start to get a lot. But I always tell people that if Harriet Tubman was still alive, she'd be an NRA member. So I don't know what they're talking about.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. I definitely know the fact that I think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but people on the other side would probably like to keep under wraps.
Of course.
In that regard.
And that's why they want to revise history, because they don't want the truth to be out there. There's a lot of things that we can learn about how, after gaining their freedom, the goal was to keep, African Americans, Black Americans from being armed, being able to protect themselves. And, history tells us that which political party established, that domestic terrorist organization known as the Ku Klux Klan, and some of the things that they did, down south and all through the Midwest. So all through that, I mean, you still had an organization like the NRA that stood for gun ownership and gun rights. I know that Wayne LaPierre tells a story about the time when he was at the Buffalo Soldier dedication out of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And one of the relatives of a Buffalo Soldier gave him that Buffalo Soldier, 9th and 10th Cavalry, his NRA membership card. Now, can you imagine? I mean, at that time, at the late 1800s, Here was a man that was serving in the 9th, 10th Cavalry that actually was a member of the National Rifle Association, which was established all about rifle marksmanship.
Yeah.
So that's the history that you and I must be able to tell, and that's why we are really, we counter that message of the progressive socialist left. They don't want us to be seen. They definitely don't want us to be heard.
And that's an interesting thing. From your perspective, why? Why are we talking about a group of people, by and large, and I'm just going to use their language, who essentially see the other side of the aisle as being tyrants, but then while at the same time failing to espouse the ideals of the Second Amendment, which inherently speak to the idea of defending against the idea of tyranny. And why is it that you think they so vehemently try to dissuade people of color and minorities from engaging organizations like the NRA or engaging blatantly in their exercise of the Second Amendment rights?
Because they would rather have people that can be enslaved than people that can be empowered. They would rather have people that can be victims than people that can be victors. They don't want this story to be told. You and I are sitting here as proud men, and we are gun owners. We're legal, law-abiding gun owners. They don't want the story to get out that the reason why those men took that battlefield at Lexington Green was because the British were coming to take our weapons and destroy the weapons manufacturing facility in Concord, Massachusetts. That's why this country got started, because we did not want to be disarmed. So why is it that today we still have individuals out there that want to see citizens being disarmed, which makes them subjects? And all you have to do is look at what's happening in Venezuela at this time. Yeah. Look at what is happening in Chicago, in many of our inner cities, where people of color cannot defend themselves against gangs and other criminal elements. I always find it very fascinating, Colion, in that, the very same people that are out there saying that they are against fascism are the ones that are promoting fascism.
Exactly.
Keeping people from, their freedom of speech, their freedom of expression, and what have you. And as I said in that speech at the NRA convention, the Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment there because if you don't have the Second Amendment, you don't have your First Amendment.
Yep. Absolutely. The Second defends the First. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll continue our discussion.